Breath of Fire is an RPG series with a lot of interesting history behind it. It's one of my favorites, and I continually lament the lack of a sixth game. Although I like each game in the series quite a bit, when viewed as a whole, you can almost look at the first two games as being two full starts. The first game, Breath of Fire, was decent in terms of gameplay, but the localization was handled by Squaresoft, as Capcom had never localized a game with so much text before. I've always been largely critical of Ted Woosley and his localization team, as I feel they butchered a lot of games that are otherwise classics, and Breath of Fire is no exception. The follow-up, Breath of Fire 2: The Destined Child, was handled by Capcom, and although it was done better, there were still lots of issues with the dialogue. Breath of Fire 3 is like a new start to the series in some ways. It's on the PlayStation, it's localized beautifully, and the gameplay, something that Capcom shines on, is better than ever. There's been two games since then, and while I love them both, I have to give it to 3. It's just the most epic, most grandiose, and most simply charming in the series. Unfortunately, as one of the early PlayStation RPGs, Breath of Fire was largely overshadowed by Final Fantasy VII. Well, other than that awesome Capcom quality we've all come to know, you might wonder what sets Breath of Fire apart from other RPG series. Of course, it's the story and themes. Breath of Fire 2 and 3 share something in common, the arc of the narrative taking place over a large span of time. In both games you start off as a little boy and at some point mature into a man. It's something that a lot of games do. Look at Ocarina of Time. And I believe it to be based on the first Final Fantasy, where you can undergo a class change. Anyway, Breath of Fire 3 does the whole growing up thing best, because you play through quite a lot of the game as a child. And you even see Ryu, the main character, change during this period. When he first starts, he's awkward with the sword and attacks by waving it around wildly. Once you meet Nina, young Ryu gains more confidence and swings his sword in a much more competent manner. It's little touches like this that help the gameplay guide the story along. There's also a very strong theme in the series, the theme of bucking authoritarian principles, most specifically organized religion, and creating a world of freedom and individual rights. In the first game, you fight a dictator who uses a goddess as his power source. In the second game, it's an evil church that feeds the faith of its misguided followers into a demon. In this game, your enemy is God, something that seems jarring at first, but the game handles it beautifully. The game doesn't come across as spearing faith or even religion, but it definitely explores the consequences of blind faith in times of war. In the backstory, the Guardians, who look like gargoyles, hunted the Brood, who were dragons, almost to extinction. They did this because God told them that the dragons were evil and needed to be destroyed. But in reality, God, or Miria, just saw the dragons' power as a threat. So the Guardians' faith caused them to commit atrocities. The dragons' own faith caused them to be pacifists, and they never fought back, despite having a moral right to exist and having superior power. So their faith caused them to be slaughtered needlessly. The main characters in the game are Ryu and Gar. Ryu is the first dragon born in many years, and does not understand why his kind are hated and feared. Gar is a guardian who questions his faith when he sees the power that Ryu has and knows that if the dragons had fought back, things would have turned out a lot differently. There are truly some remarkable themes in the game, and I could go on forever about it. Really, I could, but I also need to talk about the gameplay. The basic gameplay is somewhat similar to Chrono Trigger. You control 3 characters at a time, but you can swap them at any time, and battles take place right on the field rather than going to a separate screen, which is great for a PlayStation game as it cuts down on load times. On the overworld, you could choose when you want to fight battles, and you could do other things, such as the fishing minigame, which is unbelievably addictive. Each character also has special abilities. Some are pretty standard, like magic, but others are fairly unique. In all the Breath of Fire games, Ryu has the ability to turn into a dragon, but this game really does it the best. Throughout the game you collect dragon genes and you use them to turn into a dragon. You could select up to 3 genes to combine out of a total of 40, so there are a lot of different combinations with different stats and whatnot. The battles are great because of the strategic element. There's multiple ways to handle things. Do you go for the best weapons and armor, or do you decide to make your characters lighter so they can be faster and get an extra turn? There's also numerous formations to use, and the best part is you don't even need to use any of this stuff to play the game, but you get a really great gameplay experience if you do. Everything about the game is really memorable. The storyline, the gameplay, the character designs, even the music is worth noting, as it has an unusual soundtrack that uses cues from jazz and techno music. The game also mixes fantasy and science fiction in a really mosaic way. Breath of Fire 3 is one of the best RPG experiences you'll have. It's a long, satisfying, and thought-provoking experience that can be played in several different styles. All this and more is why it's number 6 on my list.